Welcome to After Wine School, the podcast that demystifies wine and makes it approachable for everyone. Join Keith Wallace and Alana Zerbe, two of the nation's leading wine experts, as they uncork everything you need to know about wine, from picking the right bottle to mastering unforgettable food and wine pairings. This isn't about stuffy lectures or confusing jargon. It's about enjoying wine the way it's meant to be. So grab a glass and let's dive in. Don't forget to subscribe to After Wine School today.
All right, everybody. Welcome to After School, the wine podcast. And today we are going to talk about wood. Oak, actually.
Thank you, Keith.
Yes.
And the wine we're going to be tasting is Chateau Magnus, the Terra Luna bottling from Fronsac. And before we get started, I'd like to introduce ourselves. My name's Alana Zerbe. I am the Director of Wine Education at the Wine School of Philadelphia. And joining me, as always, is my partner, Keith Wallace, the Director and Founder of the Wine School of Philadelphia. Let me get going here.
All right.
So we do have a sponsor. Our sponsor is the National Wine School, the premier online education center for aspiring sommeliers. And they have asked us to give a quick disclaimer that any of the opinions or viewpoints you hear us espouse on this podcast are truly our own and not the viewpoints or opinions of the National Wine School, the Wine School of Philadelphia, or any other business.
Yeah.
About wine, whatever we feel like talking.
And and really what that comes down to is an email saying, Keith, we love you, but man, really? Really? Yeah, well, it is after school. And, it is, to be honest, this is a condensed version of how I teach, how we teach. I mean, we bring the joy, baby. I don't understand why people can't, be intelligent and smart, creative, like so many people in the wine trade, so many people in wine education are these absolutely fantastic people, but they think they have to wear a suit and tie and just drone on and have some PowerPoints and think that's it. No, fun. It's booze. It's wine. It's amazing. And so we're talking about oak today, oak aging, because it's something that everyone is always curious about. And I love the question. So now you're going to have far more questions than I have answers. So, you want to start or you want me to start?
I think it would be very helpful if we just talked about, for folks out there, what oak does.
Oh,
why winemakers use it, maybe some of the benefits and some of the things that make it difficult or possibly seen as a negative in some instances. And then we can maybe then get into the nitty gritty of American, Slovenian.
Oh, and French. Oh. Well, let's start why we use it. Historically, we use it because it was available. Literally, that's why. Because it was oak forests were throughout Europe, and wherever you were making wine, there were usually forests of oak, and sometimes you were buying it from other countries, and then when maybe there's a blockade and you start using local oak, that's how in Bordeaux they started using French oak from the nearby forest because they used to use Baltic oak, and then there was a war and they couldn't get it anymore, and then so they started using local oak, and so it completely changed the flavor of the wines. But so we use it because it's available. Just like when here in the United States, when we started making whiskey, we used any kind of oak that was available or any kind of wood to be. Then whatever was nearby, we used. But, it was primarily, there's way more oak in America than other kinds of trees. So that's what we used. And, it just was a storage facility, and like you didn't originally use it for anything other than to store it. If you didn't sell your wine fast enough, really what you really wanted to do was sell it as fast as you can. You put in your vessel, you ship it out. Well, what if it just stuck around in your warehouse for a year or two? Well, you know what they ended up finding out is that the wines just start tasting better.
Mm-hmm.
They started getting whole new characteristics. And well, either they went bad and it was awful, or some of those barrels just really ended up being like this Jesus, what the hell happened? Like, this is insane. This wine was just mediocre, and now it's like tastes amazing. And because there are certain flavors that we just love, like
Yeah.
there's certain flavors of spices that we love,
Mm-hmm.
and like things like cinnamon and nutmeg and allspice. Basically your pumpkin spices,
Yeah.
right? You know that the things that you make, pumpkin pie with an apple pie, vanilla, like all these things. And what people don't realize is these components that are in these seeds that are nutmeg and vanilla, these are all coming from woodsy plants, like either trees or most of them are bushes, or like cinnamon is from a bark.
Mm-hmm.
So, but they're all coming from woodsy plants. And these woodsy plants, all of them have the same components in them. So, like, yeah, cinnamon, not surprisingly, has more cinnamic acid in its bark. And so it has that cinnamon flavor. Certain kinds of, like pods, like not surprisingly, vanilla has a component that's called vanillin. Just more of it than most other kinds of woodsy plants. But they all have some of it to some degree. And oak has the same thing. It has a lot of them. And they're just happening to be in the right percentage. That if you leave something in an oak barrel for a couple months, you're not going to get it. But if you leave it in for a year, you get a lot of it, especially if that's a new barrel. And now the reason why we used it originally is because it's waterproof, right? You could fill it with anything. You could put anything in it, dill pickles.
You could also roll it,
Yes.
stack it.
Yes, exactly. They're great for warehousing and shipping. That's why we used them. That's all it was, It was a way to store stuff and ship it so that it would be efficient. But it just ended up having this secondary benefit when we used oak than any other kind of tree. There are trees that make it taste weird. One does not really want to use cherry wood to make barrels. It's hard to do, but also it's just a really weird flavor, like a slightly soapy, flavor. It's weird. Not that I ever tried that, right? I did. I did. That was a very failed experiment. But, yeah, so this is why. And we also have to make barrels. It's just a part of how you make it is you have to heat, right? Because, it's oak. It's hard to, you can't bend it. So you have to bend it into place to make a barrel. And so you need a combination. You need to use like steel or some sort of metal hoops to keep it in place. But to get it into place in the first place, you have to use flame. You have to heat it up to bend it, right? Because you heat it up, the lignin actually softens, which is part of what makes the structure of oak, and you bend it into place. Boom. But so you have it inside its char now. So you end up having not just all these spice flavors. Now you have a char flavor, and so this is kind of like you're like baking a cake now, right? Because now you have char, just like coffee and chocolate does, and creme brulee has, and you have vanilla and cinnamon and nutmeg flavors they're going to pull out, and many others. So you end up having these other flavors to play with in oak, and that's why now we really culturally we love that. I mean, who doesn't like apple pie? Or pumpkin pie, or creme brulee, or vanilla, or pumpkin spice.
I don't like apple pie.
I know you don't. That's why I said something, because I am not a nice person. It is my absolute favorite pie. But of course, I had it growing up with the cheddar cheese on top, which probably makes you like it even less.
Correct.
Oh, God. All right.
Ice cream?
No, just cheddar cheese.
Okay.
If you have it once or the other. You can do a scoop of vanilla or cheddar cheese.
Okay.
If you're grown up, when I was a kid, that's what my grandfather did. I'm like, I want to be like my granddad. Yeah, I'm right on top. But
Wow.
yeah. But,
Okay.
yeah.
All right. Oak.
But yeah, so back to oak. So that's the basics of why we use it. It was available accidentally. We actually discovered that we added more flavor if you left it in a new barrel for about a year. And yeah, that's why we use them. And to this day, culturally, we love these flavors. And it's not just because it's in, wine, it's also in whiskey. It's one reason why we love bourbon, because of all those oak flavors. We just love the spices. We put in everything. Almost everything, every culture does, whether it's sweet or savory. We love spices.
So can you talk about, from a winemaker perspective, how you keep tabs on your barrels? And monitor the toast levels and how much is new and aging and when you need to
Yes.
swap them out, and just a little bit of the
Okay.
inside scoop on the production end.
So in another podcast, we talked about pricing.
Hmm.
We can only use the level of oak where it's financially feasible, because oak barrels are expensive. They're the largest cost. The barrels cost more than the winemaker, usually the rent or the cost of your whole production facility. That single price, that's the biggest capital expense you're going to have in a winery, because you got to change them out. If you want to have maximum big flavors, you are going to have to swap them out, at least 50% of them every year, if you're going for a top tier wine with a lot of massive oak flavor. That does require you to have, using a grape like Cabernet or Syrah that is actually full enough body and have enough tannins to match that oak flavor. Now, lower down, if it's a mid-tier or inexpensive wine, you're using much less new oak, much less. And oftentimes you're using most of the new oak for your luxury levels, and then we call them seasons, your second season or third season or fourth season in your mid-tier, and then mostly in their barrels, which like their fifth season or sixth season in your your lowest level. So there's almost no flavors, and they're just basically vessels to carry it in. And so that's what we typically do. We also will use oak elements within it. Like we have little oak balls. They're specifically designed for aging wines and just adding these in to give us those oak flavors. And so we use that. That's still expensive, but it's so much less expensive. So if you want those oak flavors that people expect, then we'll do that too. But so the hard thing is how you track it. Like it is, if you saw my sheets as a winemaker, it's just pure spreadsheets of where they are, where in the winery each barrel is identified, what it is, how old it is, what cooper, which is the most important thing, what cooperage, what toast level, where it is, what's in it. But I'll also have it along with records. Most of what I always did was actually with chalk on the barrel itself, identifying what it is. Maybe a little, now these days I'll put a little scan so I can scan it, so I can actually identify that specific barrel to what it is, where it is, so I can keep it as a electronic database, so I can just pull it up. But, and so I can just tell people where, or they can just look it up and like, oh, what's in here? They can use a scanner, scan it, what's in there, or just look on, on our database. Okay, I need this, and they can find out where in the
Okay, so it takes organization and
huge, absolutely. And before, like, I was making wine, in the early aughts, but we weren't using relational databases nearly as much as we do now, and definitely didn't have any online software. So what we did was, it was largely just a book or a spreadsheet, just a good old Excel spreadsheet.
Are there cooperages out there that have wait lists, or are there those so bougie that the average winery couldn't get a hold of their barrels?
Well, here's the thing. Not really.
Okay.
However, your cooperage, which is they who make your barrels, you do have to kiss their ass, especially the French ones. Like, them and their distributor, their local distributor, because there's a difference between being able to get them and then actually getting access to really good barrels. Having an order where you're really defined to exactly what you want without pissing them off. Because the more you want, the more it costs. But you can, and there may be coopers out there that I don't know about, or I just have never worked with, that are so exclusive. But, I'm not that kind of winemaker. I'm the kind of winemaker who more consulting, where I'm going to come in, I'm like, okay, we're going to use this and this and this, and then we're going to go out, and it's usually based on what's available, what distributor, what do you have locally? And if you're in California, it's really easy to get anything. East Coast, really hard to get what you want, so you have to be really nice to your distributor. I had one client who actually ended up becoming the distributor for barrels so that they could have access.
Really?
Yeah, that's another smart thing, especially on the East Coast, because they also, a lot of these cooperages really don't have much, they don't know who to go to on the East Coast, or even obscure place on the West Coast, where in Columbia Valley. Like it's harder to get, good distribution. So yeah, so there are,
That's fascinating.
So yeah, it's kind of a mess, but it also is, those guys are different. They're a whole different breed. These are, if you're a Cooper, you are part madman, part genius, and I'm scared to shit of you.
Really?
Oh God, they are some of the smartest, hardest working, meanest, most delightful. Never go drinking with one. I learned that the hard way. It's hard to drink me under the table. I got drunk the only time. Two people drunk me under the table. One was a Portuguese fisherman, and the other was a Cooper. And those are the two people where I realized that I was a mere child.
Okay. So it's serious business. Get very serious.
Oh my God.
After Wine School is proudly supported by the National Wine School, the gold standard in professional wine certifications. Whether you're dreaming of a career in the wine industry or just eager to take your wine knowledge to the next level, the National Wine School has you covered. Their programs are trusted, rigorous, and designed for aspiring wine pros like you. Visit wineschool.us to learn more and start your journey today.
Like your family does it and you're born into it.
And some people do. Like, okay, this doesn't happen anymore, but this tradition stopped only recently. But they would, if you were a Cooper who was like you were trained to be a Cooper, and when you were actually officially going to be the Cooper or a Cooper, they would put you in a barrel and roll you down the hill.
What?
Yeah. And but you were messed up by the end. Like people would dislocate fingers, get, broken things. Yeah. And then drink heavily. Yes.
Okay. These are people who work with their hands.
Yes.
So your initiation.
Yes.
Is something that might break your hands.
Oh, yes. They are just, they are like, they are just the craziest human beings, but also just smartest. Like they're Vikings. They scare me.
That's what I was thinking.
No, but you need them. Like you absolutely need them. It is a darling art. And it was one of those that if I had known that you could be this crazy and this hardworking and this smart and this, I may have been, could I have been a Cooper? I would have loved to have been a Cooper. Like because everyone, like you can just be mean to everybody and everyone's scared of you.
I'm sorry, Keith. You can be mean and everyone's scared of you. Are you sure that you haven't figured that out?
All right, that's fair enough. I found my own place. I'm in a happy place in my life. That's true. That's true. Because basically, what I was thinking is like, it's, because, we come from, they're like the chef of the wine world. Like they are just the mercurial spirits that make everything happen. And without them, you can't do anything. So, yeah. And because I was a chef in my very early days. So I guess that's probably why.
Yeah.
Okay. You're right. All right. I've been called out.
Well, no, this is fascinating. So for the folks out there, could you just talk a little bit about different types of oak and...
Of course. So, okay. In wine, it's always going to be French oak. Now, we can go into what forests, like the Allier forest, it's more about the cooperage, but usually what you're talking about is the most important thing is in French oak is what the toast level is. So most wineries today, using medium to medium plus toast, meaning that it's not a light toast inside. It's not a heavy toast. So if you looked inside the barrel, it would look like it was gently toasted toast. It would look like toast.
Okay.
Inside it'd be like, it's a little toast. And not charred, not burnt. Like whiskey barrels are typically what's called an alligator char. And that's like they've been so burnt, they look like alligator skin.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then lightly toasted, they look almost green. They're barely toasted at all. So but what you usually get as a rule of thumb, medium plus toast in, French oak. That's it. Certain wines, will be in American oak or Eastern European oak. American oak, usually like maybe these days, there used to be much more in America. You'd see more American oak, but these days, typically you're going to see in some like Zinfandels and some Petit Syrahs are going to be aged in American oak. And just Big, happy wines do
Mhm.
really well in American oak. And you see some Australian wineries using American oak to really great effect, which everyone, if you ever take our sommelier programming, they will show like an Australian Cabernet that's been aged in French oak and pretty much the same wine that's been aged in American oak. So you can see the big difference between the two. I think it's critical to understand those
It's
flavor profiles.
Barossa, right? Is
Y
mainly.
mostly, yeah, exactly. These days, mostly it's because they're traditionally they used American oak, and then you see some actually also in for historic reasons, you see them in
Toro.
yes,
Rioja.
Rioja. You see a lot in Rioja. You see a lot in Spain, like using American oak, which for very different reasons, are much older oak. Like so, that's not new American oak. So, and then you see in the middle ground, in the middle between those two, you'll see other European oaks, and specifically from one specific forest. And right now, I'm actually blanking on the name of the forest that we usually will use. Oh my God, I forgot. It's French, American, and then, oh, well, Eastern European oak.
Oh, Slovenian.
Slovenia. Thank you. I knew you knew it.
You were thinking of a forest for some.
Slovenia, it's not about the country, it's actually the forest.
Oh.
Slovenian oak.
Oh.
Now, all the oaks you're talking about, they're all white oak. They're
Right.
just slightly different versions of it, of varieties of oak. Just like, Cabernet and Merlot are different varieties of wine.
Mhm.
Here we have slightly different varieties of white oak. So it has to be white oak. And they have just slightly different pores. The difference is how the slight different compounds, like how much more vanillin versus cinnamic acid, but also just how
Tighter grains.
tighter grains and like just how large the pores are. And these are microscopic differences. So you end up having the biggest, more simple flavors, like the big pow are the American oak. The most delicate, complex flavors, like the tightest, are going to be your French oak. And the middle, somewhere in the middle, is that Eastern European, that Slavonian oak. And, which is great, is it fills in. So as a winemaker, I will use mostly French oak. But if I want a little bit more fun in the oak, I will bring in some of those Eastern European oak barrels.
Oh, okay.
And that just gives it a more, like, if I want to push up some of those more aromatics or more, more vanilla or something. And if I have like a wine that just needs to be dumb,
Mm-hmm.
like a Zin, or maybe it's a Cabernet and it's not particularly good, and I just need to make it big, fun, and happy,
Mm-hmm.
high alcohol, then I'll throw that into American oak.
Okay.
So American oak, big, dumb, happy.
Mhm.
It's like, everyone will like it.
Labrador.
Yeah, it's a labradoodle of wine. Yeah.
Not Labradoodle.
You're right.
Well, all of this talk about oak,
Yeah.
it makes me a little bit thirsty.
Oh, what are we drinking? You want to show me the label? There it is. Yeah, there it is.
This is the Chateau Carl Magnus Terra Luna.
Absolutely. Yes. Terra Luna. What does that mean? That's awesome. And here we are.
Thank you.
Fronsac, Bordeaux. All right. Okay.
Oh, I'm gonna sit back.
One of my Fronsac is my go-to place for delicious obscure Bordeaux. Okay. Now, before we started, we did have a little sip of this.
Yep.
And you did mention wet earth.
Baked earth. Like,
Warm,
and I
yeah.
don't use that description
Yeah.
very much at all, but that's what
Yeah. Like, so that smell then with the underlying of oak. So you have this almost, it would be offensive if it wasn't ringed with cigar box and spices.
Mm-hmm.
But this is like regal. I think of, like, when I think of royalty, I think of pomp and circumstance, and they're probably a little smelly. I'm thinking like 18th century, just, not bathed particularly, but very impressive.
I think of none of that.
I mean, come on. You know that they were smelly. They just, but that's why I think this is a very, this just is dignified, beautiful, almost offensive, but not. Like, it just hits me in the right place. And
All right, sip coming up.
all right, after that note, okay.
Wow.
Now, we started chatting just a while ago. I mean, it's been about half an hour since we tried this first,
Mhm.
and it is really opened up. I decanted this an hour before, then we tried it. Now it's an hour. Now, so it's an hour and a half in a glass. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
So at first, when we first tried this, I was deeply impressed with the structure, right? The evolution on the palate when you're going from the attack to the finish. It did the things that I love. It did that thing where it starts really intense and then turns beautiful. And then it starts becoming more intellectual and like more complex, and then finishing off with like real beautiful fleshiness. Now that it's been sitting in glass, it's become more fleshy,
Yes.
richer,
Yes.
more decadent as
Yes.
it goes on.
Mm-hmm. More.
Yes. Yeah, it's becoming that Merlot-ness of it. But yeah, it is. No, it is. It's the two sides. And this is why just being able to have opening a bottle and never just drinking it right away, but let it sit.
Yeah.
Have it over time. Like, it's a great way, right? Just, it's a great way to spend an evening or, afternoon drinking and enjoying a wine. Bordeaux and Fronsac specifically is a very intellectual wine. It's that. So for me, when I have like an Hermitage, right?
Mhm.
That's pure, just decadence. It's intense, smelly, just it hits all like the emotional centers of my brain. Burgundy is the very opposite. It's just like it's capturing my, like I'm thinking deeply about it, like I'm reading Dostoevsky. But then this is in the middle, right? This is where it's hitting both the decadence and then the intellectual, and it's going back and forth. That's mine.
Mhm.
That's my when I want great Bordeaux, and that's how I judge it. Varietal fingerprint, regional typicity, but then this. I need this part of it to make me happy. And this is doing that. And it's fine because this isn't a very particularly expensive bottle.
I know.
Yeah.
know.
Fronsac is always like this great unknown, and that's the thing of knowing about wine. Know the right places, know what no one else is buying, know how great the winemakers are there. That's where you focus. So hopefully people will start buying Fronsac. So I didn't ask you though, like, how are you feeling about this wine?
So it's not my like standout style. It's
Right.
not my go-to.
Yeah.
But it really is opening up. There's so many layers to it.
Yeah.
I'm getting even more of that like hawthorn or tea berry.
That's what I love tasting with you. Like, you always pull things out that I'd miss.
It's just very floral, and that baked earth. It is very intriguing, and I want to know more. It's not my go-to.
Yes.
It doesn't send off all the serotonin like some other wines. But I would never hesitate to pour this for someone who was a very serious, especially Cabernet drinker. I
That's
think
true,
this
yeah.
is something that could really change
Wine-
people's minds.
That's really true. Oh my God. No, absolutely stunning.
Well, thank you so much, friends out there. If you enjoyed this, please like and subscribe. We'll be here. We're going to keep doing these
Oh,
little
absolutely.
shows for you.
Oh, yeah.
And we'd love to hear from you. So if you have any thoughts on subjects or feedback, we'd love to hear it. Until next time.
Until next time, and as always, tell people, right? If you like this, if you find this like delightfully offensive, yeah. If you like the thing, tell people. It's really important. It's the only thing that really matters is to tell people about it. Sure, absolutely love the reviews, but also more importantly, look, if you want to hear us talk about things, throw us a line, throw a comment in. We read everything you send us, mean, nice, anything. So let us know. It's really because look, we get the drink and talk and things we do. Like you get a little bit of what the wine school's about. The Wine School of Philadelphia, and the reason why we're, how long have we been teaching? Like, I've been teaching for 25 years now.
Yeah.
Wow. All right.
All right, guys. Take good care. See you next time. Cheers.
Thanks for spending time with us on After Wine School. If you enjoyed today's episode, hit subscribe so you never miss out on more wine wisdom, tips, and laughs. Until next time, raise your glass, savor the moment, and cheers to you.